Zohran Mamdani was just caught on camera lying about a policy that blew up in his face that humiliated him, and now he's backtracking on that communist policy. Also, we have more and more Republican senators coming out and revolting, torching the Rhino leader, Senator John Thune, over failing the Save America Act. Let us get into our first story. Now, let us talk about the communist mayor up there in New York, Zohran Mamdani, because he recently announced a policy that blew up in his face, and now he's on camera lying about that policy. And what Zohran Mamdani did, they announced that they will be requiring IDs for their communist grocery store. And it's ironic because the Democrats, they're saying that it's racist to have ID to vote. And here we have that video of Zohran Mamdani announcing that IDs will be a requirement for the communist grocery store. And then we'll take a look at the video of him lying about this very same policy that he just announced. Watch this.
How are you going to keep people from taking advantage of that, that deal, basically, and is there going to be a limit on the number of items that someone can take that are discounted at that level from that essential basket?
So our RFP makes very clear that this is a program for New Yorkers to be able to put food on the table, not a program for people to be able to make a quick buck through reselling. I'm going to pass it over to our EDC head, G-Pack, to add some additional details.
Yes, if you look at our RFP for the operator, we are looking to make sure that we target New Yorkers, whether it be at sort of a library card-esque, and also we manage who's buying, and that is focused on everyday New Yorkers. So we are mindful of that, and so we're going to make sure that we have all the things in place to ensure that that does not happen.
You heard that clearly coming from Mamdani and his administration, that some type of identification will be required for the communist grocery store. But here we have this video of Zohran Mamdani denying that that will be a requirement. Straight up lying after the policy blew up in his face, because everyone was outraged. The internet was outraged because the Democrats, they talk about voter ID and then they want you to have an ID to buy some bananas. Watch this video.
When we're talking about a city-run grocery store, one in each borough, which, by the way, you do not need an ID to shop at, no matter what you've just heard in the news of today. We're talking about actually addressing the question of skyrocketing grocery prices.
So clearly, Zohran Mamdani is trying to save face, because this policy was a complete humiliation for him and the Democrats. Because remember, Zohran Mamdani was the same guy that required New Yorkers to have IDs to essentially shovel snow. And now it's the same thing, but they don't want you to have an ID in order to vote. And the question is why? Because now we have reports coming out saying that there are over 200,000 suspected illegal ballots cast in that mayoral race where Zohran Mamdani was elected. But before we take a look at that, here we have President Trump. He was asked about this ID requirement in New York City, and he went off on Zohran Mamdani. Watch this.
Mr. President, New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani is requiring an ID to access his government-run grocery stores. What then is your message to Democrats who do not want to pass the Save America Act and ensure, ID at the ballot box?
This was just announced.
Yeah.
I heard about it. Yeah. Well, I wish they'd have an ID to access the voting booth. You know, they don't want to access the voting booth with any identification. We want voter ID, and we want proof of citizenship. Well, he also had a thing where you had to have 2 different IDs to shovel snow during the winter, right? So that's a very friendly question. I like her. Who are you with?
One American News, sir.
Very good.
I completely agree with President Trump that we need voter ID, and we need it immediately, because Zohran Mamdani might be the prime example as to why we need voter ID, because we have this article exposing that an election auditor says that over 200,000 votes cast in NYC mayoral election are suspicious. So basically what the auditor found is that a whole bunch of votes that were cast, there were a whole bunch of issues with them, like not having any social security number at all, or there was something wrong with the social security numbers, like the range of the social security number isn't possible. And the interesting thing about this is that the report claims that the margin of victory that Socialist Mayor Zohran Mamdani won by is below the number of votes that the report brings into question. And this is why we need the Save America Act. But let us move on to our next story. Now, let us talk about Senator John Thune, the Rhino leader in the Senate that's facing a revolt from Senate Republicans, because now we have over 20 Senate Republicans that's calling for John Thune to suspend the August recess until he can pass the Save America Act. And this list is growing by the day. And the Senate leaves soon for that recess. And John Thune, he doesn't seem like he's going to suspend this recess. And the next time the Senate is going to be back in session is in September. And here we have Mike Lee, who's leading this revolt torching John Thune. Watch this.
Both simultaneously be back into session in the Capitol until, wait for it, September 14th. Mid-September. This is the last week, absent some change in the respective chambers' meeting schedule, the last legislative week until mid-September, which will take us to just, what is that, 6 weeks before the November election? That is unacceptable. We don't have a lack of time, Mr. President. We have a lack of spine. Don't ever confuse lack of time with lack of spine, because they're two very different things.
I completely agree with Senator Mike Lee. Senate GOP, they lack spine, and I would go as far as to say they lack proper leadership and courage as well, which is why I think Senator John Thune should be fired. If Senator John Thune cannot get the Save America Act passed by the end of this summer, he should be fired. 100% he should be gone. And Senator Mike Lee isn't the only one who's growing increasingly frustrated with Senator John Thune. It's basically every Republican in the Senate who's not a part of the Rhino group. Because here we have this article explaining that senators, Republican senators, they're now calling out John Thune and saying he's making a huge mistake. And just to show you exactly what I'm talking about, Senator John Kennedy, the beloved senator from Louisiana, lashed out at Senate Majority Leader John Thune on Monday. And the reason why he did this is because John Thune has been focusing on pushing through nominees instead of focusing on the Save America Act and the budget as well, to avoid a government shutdown in the coming months. And here we have President Trump. He was asked about the recess, and this is what he had to say. Watch this.
Almost 20 GOP senators who have pledged to stay in D.C. to pass the Save America Act. So what's your message to the rest of the senators who are still on their summer recess?
I think there's nothing more important than the Save America Act. I think they should stay. They do what they want, but I think they should stay. I think it's so important to get it passed. Yeah.
This should have been the priority since Trump came back into office the second time. And I'll give the administration credit. They've been doing everything that they can to essentially push Congress to pass this bill. The House have been doing whatever they can to pass a bill. They have passed it multiple times. But for some reason, the Senate, they cannot figure this thing out. And the question is why? And here we have Senator Rick Scott. He was asked about the Save America Act and to give a fair assessment as to where the Save America Act stands. And he said they're going to try this week to push it through reconciliation. So let's hope we can get something before this recess. Watch this.
Talked about this so often on this show, and so many Americans are so frustrated that even after the news out of New Jersey, and I'm sure many other states, we still can't get just even bare minimum voter ID, proof of citizenship. Where are we honestly in transparently when it comes to the Save America Act? Please be honest with our audience. Is there a chance that this is going to happen?
Well, we ought to be voting on it every week, and even if we can't get the whole thing passed, vote on parts of it. And I believe we ought to force people to talk. That's how the filibuster is supposed to work. And then when people are done talking, you vote. It only takes 50 votes. But that's not where we are. What we can do this week is we're going to have hopefully a reconciliation vote this week, which will get as much in the Save America Act in the reconciliation vote, which only takes Republican votes, and get that started this week. It won't be finished this week. Ron Johnson, the chair of the Budget Committee, and hopefully that's what we'll be doing all day Wednesday and all night Wednesday night to get everything we can in the Save America Act passed inside reconciliation, and then work with the White House to see what else they can do from an administrative standpoint. I think we ought to stay up here to get things done. I'm a business guy. I work 7 days a week. We're working 2.5 days a week. We're barely up here. We need to stick around and get stuff done.
And that brings us to the end of this video. Please let me know what you think in the comment section below in regards to Mamdani up there in New York, all the crazy stuff that he has going on. And let me know what you think about Senator John Thune. Do you think he should be fired if he cannot get this bill passed by the end of this summer? Also, if you have made it this far, you have probably noticed that I covered 2 stories within this single video. Typically, I'll just do 1 story, but let me know what you think about this new format moving forward, because there's a possibility that I'll try to cover 1, 2, 3 stories per video. But if you just want me to cover the 1 story, if you've been a regular viewer, just let me know what you think about it. Also, please consider liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing, and I'll see you in the next video.